Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for Nerds by Nerds, and today I have a bunch of nerds we are hanging out with, and it's been a long, long time since we've done a 9 of the NAG world building patron hangout for the top patrons. Due to various reasons, people shifting in and out of that position, as well as just never being able to schedule people. But we got one. We've roped one in, and she's here. We have Nerdarchist Ted in the house, and Nate the Nerdarch, as well as Ellie or Alun.
Mm-hmm.
So, how's everyone doing this evening?
It's a nice cold Saturday, nice cold Sunday night.
Yeah. So apparently, in the Northeast-ish, it's a little bit chilly, and three of us are in the basement. So.
Thank God I'm upstairs. I must be the only. I do plan. The sad thing is I do plan on remodeling my basement to just do webcast gaming and all that, and it is cold down there too. So I'm gonna be in the same sometime at some point in the same predicament. And right now I'm burning alive upstairs. So
it's great in the summertime. It's much cooler in the basement. Matter of fact, my family will come and find me and loiter, and I'm like, hey, you're in the corporate gym over there. You have to get out.
I don't know. It was mentally cold for me because I just got done playing in Kretschfer's Belt, and for my fan game today, we went 4 hours. I was just over 30 seconds over 4 hours. I tried to make it under 4 hours, but it didn't work out, and that's the norm for me. But it was a lot of fun. I
was watching in and out, and I was like, he's still going. He's still going.
Did you watch the last half hour? Because that is internet gold as far as I'm concerned. You got to watch.
I ducked in and out, something about a head and thunderstep, but
Yeah. If you catch the last hour, it's fantastic. The rest of it's good too, but that is made my day.
You heard it, folks. Just skip to the last hour.
No, don't skip.
I will check that out tomorrow, Nate.
It looked like you guys were having fun, though. So, Ellie, do you end up gaming more as a player or more as the GM?
Well, I play as a player right now for Fantasy Grounds because there's so much to learn still. I'm getting there. I'm trying to build my own DM's guide because I'm not in love with what they use for the default icons and pictures, and that takes a lot of time. So right now it's just player, and then Laren and a couple of the other guys have been just helping me out here and there. We'll do a sandbox and just learn some of the controls and whatnot. But it's a very long uphill battle. So for Fantasy Grounds, I am a player. At tabletop sessions, I am a GM/DM.
Well, that's always good too, because then you get your fill of either or, depending on.
Yeah, it is nice. It's nice.
So I want to say thank you to Shasta for the super chat, and Tabaxi are the best race in D&D 5e, according to him. So since you super chatted, I will agree with you for now, unless someone else super chats you.
Oh man, you heard it here. Dave has just said that dwarves are no longer the superior race.
The challenge has been accepted. I'm sure by somebody.
So what kind of setting do you like to play in?
When I'm playing in a setting,
we're running doesn't matter. What's your preferred game style?
So my GM style is very story driven. So I got to know the players a little better. I haven't been blessed with having a good selection of solid campaigners. It's sort of random people that pick up groups and whatnot. So then it's usually a lot of people that are new. So I'll do a lot of one-offs. In my dream world, I love campaigns. I love the stories. I love building out these worlds. But in the real world of the gaming world, I don't really get that opportunity too much. Not at least lately.
So let's do a little bit about do a little bit of that here, I guess. And folks, if you're in the chat, you want to chime in, feel free to chime in. We're more than interested in hearing your take on things as well.
We got dwarves, tritons, kobolds, all vying for power at the moment.
Nice. So where do we want to start is the question, and you're the guest of honor, Ellie. So
wow, I write for Nerdarchy and I'm a guest of honor. This is good stuff. So I guess, if you're starting out and this is something that you're thinking about doing and you're a first time player, I like to go cheap is better. And I like to do free websites that'll do automatic world generators and just bam, 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 knock out the world, kind of import that world into my paint.net, throw a layer over top of it, and then sort of scope it out the way I like it. If I don't like the mountains, get rid of the mountains. If I want to name a town something, I name the town something. And then you always want to start small because thinking about the big of the world is overwhelming. So if you've got your world map that you can edit and just kind of go with the flow, and you got your little areas that you're working in, you know where your players are, I think it's always best to start small. I have a very firm belief that worlds kind of create themselves over time.
Yeah, especially if you leave the room for that.
What?
If you leave the room, if you don't fill everything up and you leave blanks, you can it will absolutely be.
There's two ways.
Okay.
There's two ways to interpret what you said there, Dave. To physically get up and leave the room, as well as to make a placeholder for growth.
Yeah, the latter.
Okay, I was like, wait, what?
They invited you on to kick you out.
So what tool is it that you like to use? Because I'm curious, because I have not seen a random world builder.
So the random world builder that I use is a free website. It's by Donjon. It's literally donjon.ben.sh. You build the atlas. The default is 2% of ice that you want, the percent of water. You add your geography, your rivers, cities, castles. You do a hex grid. You label the map, and boom, it just creates it for you. And then dump it in.
I've used that site for other things. I didn't realize you could build a whole world over there with just a couple decisions.
Absolutely.
That's really cool. So there you go, guys. If you didn't know, because I didn't, I've even used that site before.
Yeah. And I don't use it. There is a lot of good stuff in that site, but I don't use the spell sheets, the monsters, or the random generators. I just use that world map builder to get started on the easy stuff, I guess. I mean, because I always think there's a lot of great expensive things you can use, like CC3, but I mean, I'm not that fancy, so, or that skilled, or want to learn something else on top of Fantasy Grounds, so I'm good.
Yeah, for our home campaign, we kind of did the same thing, but we haven't even bothered with the map yet. We've just done, the town that everyone is kind of adventuring out of, and kind of been like building that out as we go. As a matter of fact, I just saw a sage advice, I think, earlier today, and when someone was asking Mike Morales for advice on campaign building and world building, and that's exactly what he said: is start small and then work out from there. It was like one of the best pieces of advice I've seen early on.
And at the rate we're going, in about 15 years, we'll have a nice 80% world map done.
We made the thing too big. It's going to take longer than that.
Well, you don't have to show the players your world map. You can show them where they've adventured in the areas in which they've gone. I mean, they may know of the world, but they don't have to necessarily know everything about it. And that's sort of what I do. I'll provide the maps at the end of the campaign to everyone in an email of what they've explored, what they've seen, and what they're more familiar with.
So let's see, Adam Ogre wants to weigh in. And how about starting in a town under quarantine so the players have to find something to do with the town until it's lifted? That's a great way to start an adventure and kick an adventure off. Anything where it's like there's something already going on. So here's a problem that has to be solved. You want to leave town? Well, you can't, because guys are hemmed in.
That's actually a really great way to force town exploration, because by doing so, like, that's all there is. There is no going out in the dungeon. There is no go looking for monsters. You are stuck in town via Sword Point.
So, I guess one of the questions you have to ask yourself is, like, when you're starting your world building, is the people, right? Who are in the world? Who are the primary? Is it like a D&D default where you're like, okay, everyone's human, or are you doing something different in your world? I think for us, we've kind of gone with the default, but we've added a lot of the other races in. So we wanted to start in an area that was more or less very cosmopolitan. So what is your take on that aspect of world building, Ellie? Like, I don't know if you have your own setting that you're working on, if we want to build one here together tonight or start one.
I have my oldie-timey world that I wouldn't want to share in case other people started playing in it, and then I'd have to give too much away. So, if we wanted to do something from scratch, we could do that. I really liked a video that Jim Davis did on WebDM about avoiding the monocultures, that if race doesn't equal culture is what he had said, and that it just because you're an elf in one region, an elf in another region isn't necessarily going to have all of the same ideals and beliefs, and there's still going to be nuances everywhere depending on locations. And I do like that aspect of thinking like there's not just all elves and there isn't just all dwarves and there isn't just all. You're going to have these niche pockets, and in some cases, races of different continents completely different, even though they're your elves or they're your dwarves or what have you.
No, I agree. I feel like that is very, very much a thing that happens in the D&D game. Is all the other races get kind of stereotyped.
Yeah.
And the only multicultural race that ever exists is humans.
Well, that's one of the things I think is so great about Gryffindor is it has that, that cosmopolitan aspect of there are elves and there are elves, there are dwarves, and as it's gone, like it's gotten bigger. There's now Dragonborn and Clockwork people that all make this up, and like each thing has done something new and something great to that town.
We have, I know, like in our own world, we have our Crathan Gulch dwarves, which are the ones that are near like where all the adventuring is kind of happening right now. But then we also have this other region where we have dwarves that we've kind of imported from a previous campaign called Stonehome, and it's like a single spire mountain surrounded by like blasted, desolate lands. It's and all that land is kind of in this giant like bowl-shaped. I don't know what you would call that, canyon, valley, whatever. But the idea was in ages past. The dwarves were assailed by orcs, and they laid siege to the mountain, and they held the siege for a certain amount of time, and then decided they couldn't break the dwarves, so they prayed to evil gods, and they set up this ritual where they just blasted away all the land around the mountain, creating this like vast desert region, and I guess it's like a giant like box canyon. But not only that, it was cursed in the sense that it was inhabited by all kinds of monsters, primarily bullays, so land sharks. So they were kind of like cut off from the rest of the world and trapped. And so being dwarves, what they decided to do was, they just delved deeper into the ground to get the resources they need to survive long enough. But they built a massive long land bridge that's like miles long, to in order to be able to leave Stonehome. And then another aspect of that game was the coming of age ritual for those dwarves is for a group of them to go out into that desert and look for the bullays, and they would hunt them.
Yeah.
And you couldn't come of age until you brought back the bullay, the metal from its neck, and then the dwarves would then smelt that metal and turn it into shark steel. And and then it became like a thing that region of dwarves were known for, was producing this rare metal.
So the metal has like an electric blue tint to it. It doesn't really have super amount of properties, but it does look cool when you make stuff out of it. It does require a little bit more work to actually refine and forge with it, but it becomes that new rich material, that new resource that is unique to our world.
And then I think at the time when it was actually the other world that we were playing in, there was a festival that would happen every year, and that would be the only time that those dwarves would leave. They're kind of xenophobic. It was the only time that they would allow merchants out to actually sell that particular metal. And then we were trying to do a different take on elves in our world too, except for we just didn't put enough of the pre-planned work into it, I think. But in essence, I think what we wanted to do was have two elven kingdoms, one being Karshapathian and one being this other place called the Crawlwood. And we wanted to base our elves more off of Fey elves and the courts. And we wanted to have dark elves and light elves, except for instead of just having drow, we were going to make them look like the regular elves, but they're cursed and they live in this cursed forest. And we've done a little bit with like the hierarchy of elves, like Eladrin are like the super nobles in our world, and beneath them are high elves, and then the wood elves are more of the commoners. But it also represents like their connection to the Feywild. Like the wood elves are more connected to this world. The high elves are more pretentious and want to be connected to the Feywild, but really aren't anymore. And then the Eladrin are still connected, and the hierarchy's been kind of built out from there.
So we kind of have like the elves in that hierarchy. The wood elves kind of live on the ground. The high elves literally live higher up in the trees, and then the Eladrin literally live in the Feywild.
So Frank asked,
do Avariel still exist in 5th edition?
Dude, it was in one of the Unearthed Arcanas. So depending on whether they take that somewhere and put it somewhere else or not, we shall see. But it's unofficially in there. So if we're going to like create a world right now, right here, and we're talking about, well, how can we use the demi-humans differently if we're going to do that as a starting point? How are we going to do that, and how is it going to be relevant from the idea of if we wanted to start small and kind of work our way out?
To start with an island chain or a peninsula.
Island chain works.
Or a peninsula, something that's
away.
Yeah,
something that's its own place.
I like the idea of working in the islands.
I think that the island chain is nice in the sense that, like, say you have the same races on the different islands and maybe they evolve differently. That would work out nicely with that.
Or they just have preferences for certain islands. Like an elf would probably want one that feels like more at home or nature-y, or
more trees, more
water,
brooks, streams.
Or if the only elves in the area are sea elves, perhaps they like they're in mangrove forests.
Well, what about like if we're saying we want to not have like monocultural elves? So for that to happen, you have to have more than one kind of elf, or not necessarily more than one kind, but more than one area where the elves are, right? Or if they're in the same area and they're not monocultural, why would that be? I kind of like the idea if you're going to do an island chain of somewhere's in that island chain being like almost like a floating city, so and maybe they could get around like almost like Venice where you have canals and stuff.
Well, I wanted to make a group of elves that, pretty much, they're not sea elves that are actually aquatic elves that live underneath the waves, but that actually travel on, large vessels, and they're always on the move. So they're constantly sailors.
And they float on these large kind of floating cities.
Right. And then they'll fish for food. They'll, stop in on, lands whenever they come upon them to actually, do some, get whatever resources they might need, resupply whatever, plants they need, but they could actually have large enough vessels that they are growing things there as well.
Well, if you made these things big enough, you could have wood elves and like a type of sea elf, right? Are we thinking what type of elves are we thinking about? Just like more than one is the idea?
Well, the idea, actually, I think the real idea is to have the same elf, but different takes on them and why they would be different. When you say, like, now I'm envisioning like Water World, really.
Yeah, to an extent. I mean, that's kind of what I am looking at.
So,
well, if you make it a floating Venice Lake City, and then you also have higher places and lower places, and then you've got people that like to go to the islands, like to live on the islands, like to live close in the coral reefs around the islands. I mean, a sea elf, being by the sea is probably cool too. So there's different ways of living as that same type of elf. But they don't have sea elves yet, so I was just thinking about something that's a bit different than the standard that's in 5e right now.
There is the Unearthed Arcana Sea Elves. They did do that, and the same one they came out there Vorial. They did like 4 different takes.
I guess it's kind of irrelevant as long as they can swim and they can breathe a bit underwater or have some kind of magic, I don't know, seaweed they eat or whatever. I don't really care. How they could be high elves that have the seaweed. I don't really care.
Well, they
It doesn't.
boats and magic, so you have to think about that too. Do some of the islands not have magic, and do some of the other races on the island have magic? And then how do they view the races that do and the races that don't? And that becomes a big contention to plot and also to economy and just near everything if that's what you're going to do. That becomes very that's a very interesting.
So if there's like this floating city, right, that kind of like sails the seas, like why is it doing that? What is the purpose of that? And the question is that the place where you're starting as an adventurer?
Well, I was thinking that as like an offshoot to the islands, to have another elven culture that's out there, because you said you wanted multiple. I wasn't trying to throw this out in lieu of the island chain.
Well, that would be interesting in the sense that if you have the elves that come, maybe it all started at the same place, this chain of islands, and for whatever reason, which we probably need to come up with, is why did these elves need to go out and leave? So they may have started the same, whether they're both high elf, wood elf, or whatever, it doesn't really matter. But then their culture would evolve differently because they have different lifestyles.
So I looked at, when I was, kind of coming up with this idea, and it's kind of been floating in my head since like the day or two before they actually released that Unearthed Arcana with the aquatic elves, which is kind of frustrating to me. It is what it is. But I was like, they left for freedom. They left so that, they didn't have to be land bound. They didn't have to follow whatever, rules and stuff that was going on there. They wanted their own thing, and it could have been a generation ago, or it could have been many elven generations ago, but they decided that this was going to be their new way of life.
I think it's better if you go with many generations ago, and I feel like there should have been something bad that happened to cause them to up and leave, but they couldn't take everybody, so the other elves got left behind and other races as well. But they found a way to survive. They found a way to overcome whatever was going to happen. Like, I like the idea, like the island chain was going to be wiped out by like volcanoes or something.
So, how about that? It was a volcano, and perhaps, the aftermath is, there's now another island in the chain from the volcano.
Well, or either that, or a hero rose up to appease the fire god to put the volcano to sleep. It could actually be something that kind of just like smolders in the background as one of the main islands. But the other elves have already left. They just assumed this was going to be destroyed, and
this was end of days.
Yeah. And how does this affect the relationship, right? If they come back and say, "Hey, let's go see what happened to our old haunt," and those guys are still there and alive, and these guys show up and they're like, "These are the guys that left us for dead."
that would be cool to have some tension there.
Just wanted to comment about the stuff in the chat. We have a Dragon Turtle Island. It has a hollow world inside of it. I believe that's where we stuck our hollow world. So
We did.
It's probably on another world building someplace.
It is one of the live chats we did.
Yeah. So just wanted to put that out there for people talking about the giant dragon turtle island.
We need
They got
we need a historian for us as a.
Well, after
You mean
2,000
some-
videos, it's kind of ungainly to be like, oh, that video right here. Look.
Yeah.
Well, I know I started collecting data from a number of points and putting it into a Google Doc, but it's not quite the same thing.
All right, so Adam has got an idea or question. It might just be question to get our attention, but branching off the island idea, possibly the players get teleported to a prison island as punishment to start the teleporter breaks, and they have to find a way to fix the teleporter to leave. Well, I like that idea, but I like the idea that maybe they can't fix it, and this is where most of the campaign is going to happen, especially if you do it at the very beginning.
Well,
Yeah,
what
like,
if
as they fix it?
what if there's a portal on the mainland that's literally only one way, and this is where they throw their rejects?
Are you trying to make Australia?
Almost as soon as I say Australia.
Hey, it turned out all right for them after 100 years.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so we have to do that fast forward and then.
So do we like the idea of elves being the dominant species instead of humans or dwarves or something else?
Yeah, I can totally get behind a mostly elven culture. We would have to decide what other races and stuff have some kind of presence here, knowing elves are, very long lived. So it doesn't take a huge amount to really create a dominant presence. But so humans would literally have to be rare considering how frequently they can populate.
What do we think about primitive volcano dwarves?
You want to expand
like
that
that.
thought a little bit? I want to see where you're going with it before
I think they're
Dwarves
more
that live
than
in volcanoes. I mean, really.
Yeah, there you go. See, Nate knew where I was going.
Yeah.
Very
All right, so I wouldn't see them as the typical clad in metal and whatnot. So would they be more tribal?
Yes, more tribal. Work with obsidian. More than steel.
They work with the stone.
Yeah.
So then, what are you thinking as far as beards? Do they shave them like Dark Sun?
Nah, I think they would
A lot
still
of
have
shaving.
beards. I think they have beards where they actually, they probably take chunks of stone and obsidian and work it in them.
Okay.
And then what I would want to do is every race that's in this island chain has their own myth on how their people stop the volcano from going off.
So on the planet, we've got the islands. Are there continents also, or is it just chains of islands all over this planet? It's just a smattering of different islands, and with maybe the continent or one of the big areas is where this volcano is. The volcano.
So I would say that there are continents, but they're not continents like we have here on Earth. They're much bigger than what an island would be, but they're still going to be considered a continent because it'll actually connect to the sea floor as opposed to not.
And what if all the continents that are there, for whatever reason, the civilization on this planet has sprung up around these island chains, and maybe there's more than one, but the actual continents themselves are really wild and untamed.
Which would explain the dwarves that are there that are more kind of not feral, but more tribal than they are an organized group of society civilization.
Maybe we need some arboreal halflings.
All right, so in homage to Shasta and the awesome super chats that they've sent our way, where do we want to put the tabaxi?
Same place we put the fox people.
But the question is, what do they say?
Are they?
No,
treat-
I like
back?
that. I mean, I think we're going with probably a little bit more primitive society.
Mm.
Anyway, with the island chains, we probably in the center, of these island chains, there's this elven society and culture, and I think that's going to be like I would want to make that like the pinnacle. And I would probably want to start the campaign with the other elves returning.
Mm-hmm.
So right off the bat, you have this huge conflict that could happen.
Okay.
And maybe they've returned, and like they've returned because they need to go someplace because they're they've overextended their resources. Whether it's space or food or drinking water, and no one is successfully pushed into any of the continents because they're so wild and untamed, which would also create great places to adventure. And then
So
you can also
perhaps whatever the mainstay crop is, the grain, whatever it is that you're using to make the bread, like it's just not like you can put the seed down, but it's just not growing. So maybe
Let's start building a blight.
So like if I'm certain Nate probably knows more about this, but like grounds tend to cycle, and you need to, if you plant something in one location, it puts different nutrients back in the ground. Well, perhaps the generations that they've been here, like the nutrients that their primary grain needs just aren't here anymore. So maybe there's you have to venture out into the continent and find a new source.
Or we could make it a blight that's starting to take over everything.
Don't want to go too close to Moana there.
Is that in there?
or do we?
Is that what that is? I was thinking more Interstellar.
Oh yeah.
Hey, all good ideas come from something, okay?
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that
Or
that-
Dark
you know,
Water. The Dark Water could be pushing up.
Oh man, flashbacks. Dark Water.
So this island chain, like, is it one regional law, for lack of a better word, and we've got it's mostly elves, and what is the relationship between the elves and the tribal dwarves? Do they get along? Is there tension?
So Snyder Fan 5 said Aztec style, and that's kind of what I was thinking. Like, if you like the main civilization, I imagine if you were to take like Venice and mash it together with Aztec.
Oh, I like that
styling, like that would be, and they're elves, and it's like it's still a city, so you could probably find dwarves and halflings and other race and humans and other races there. But and they probably have their own sections or ghettos within the city, but it's ruled by elves. Could be a king, could be an emperor, queen, empress,
God Emperor,
God Emperor, or God Empress, something like that. I like that idea. Let's do it. How do you guys feel about like a God Empress?
That could work.
I can get behind that.
Perhaps there's some contention about the validity of them, but at the same time,
Epic Stench says an Empyrean overlord.
Gotta have them overlords. So there's Ricky's floating the idea of oceans start evaporating, connecting different islands, creating conflict.
Well, if the ice is forming someplace else, and they're like the waters could be receding if there's a whole bunch of glacials creation somewhere.
Flying Turtle Island needs more energy drink Guys are silly. Reginator, my wife's chihuahua ate all my chickens.
That's a fierce chihuahua.
I'm not sure if I should be sad or if it's supposed to be funny. I guess it depends on whether you're the chihuahua or the chickens.
I love Fraginator. He has always got something unique and interesting to say. I gotta say.
Aren't chickens generally bigger than chihuahuas?
They're mean too. They are mean.
How did it even happen? Keel Porter, what about Dragonborn? Yes, but they have to be modeled after the Galapagos Island aquatic iguanas.
The marine iguanas?
The marine iguanas, yeah.
So do they get a swim speed?
Give them something. I mean, they don't even have dark vision. Jeez. Like their breath weapons, that awesome. Sorry, I'm done hating on the Dragonborn balance.
We can nerf them ourselves. So like, we've already nerfed the dwarves. We can just do that with the Dragonborn too.
I don't see it so much as being nerfed as that. Like just being, it would be. I see it as a little bit more of a primitive campaign.
But didn't we say that the elves are the dominant species and the island-based is the more civilized pinnacle of society types, whereas the continents aren't where the dwarves and things are? So,
I'm also kind of like picturing it as being warmer climate, tropical.
Absolutely, that's how I see it too.
So
that's why I don't see melting. I don't see maybe evaporating water over time, but I don't see the ice caps here.
Oh no, I mean that's why there's freezing someplace else, and that's why you've got the receding waters.
Or what if something chased the other elves kind of back home? Like something's going on in the greater world, and like
rise in dragon turtle population.
What is it?
A rise in dragon turtle population.
Yeah. So whether it's a blight, whether it's dark water, whether it's a glacial ice pushing this way.
Sea dragons. It's the sea dragons.
Sea dragons.
And we're gonna just keep stealing from everywhere. Pirates of Darkwater.
Nothing's really original anymore.
The world's flat and the edges are starting to fall off.
Ted, nothing is new under the sun, man.
The world is flat and cats are just roaming near
the there you go.
Tabaxi, giant tabaxi.
Giant tabaxi.
Or almost like the Never-Ending Story where it's like this like awful darkness, this awful thing is happening, and they don't even know what it is.
Nothing.
Whatever the big bad is.
Yeah, and it's just pushing things back towards these islands. They've come home, the elves have come home to roost. And that's where you would start a campaign because now you have that building conflict, and you have to decide, well, how do the other races feel about these elves? How do these elves feel about each other? And then if you had this god empress figure and the other elves come back, would that be a threat to her power, her power base?
And is
absolutely.
The god empress type, she or he or whatever that's the warship of the continent where the dwarves are? Is that what we're saying? Like they've got this new deity / maybe even mortal or avatar, whatever that they're worshiping?
Well, I was thinking that she's on the islands in the city, but it doesn't have to be that way. What if there's two? What if the flotilla came back with one as well? Like that would be a huge problem.
I think if the god empress or emperor was on the floating island.
What if they were a couple?
Could do that too.
That would be weird though. That would be weird. Like one stayed and one went. Like one stayed to die with their people and the other one went.
Well, it's like going down with a ship, right? It's kind of like that.
It is, but it'd be weird to leave one behind. Like
I agree. Yes.
Throwing the idea out there. So sometimes the dart hits the dartboard, and other times it falls flat.
It hits its head.
That's okay. I think it's okay to discuss. Like
yeah,
absolutely.
Okay, so go ahead. As far as the nerfing of the dwarves, I think it's more of the dwarves don't care. Oh, elven empress, whatever, or elven emperor, whatever. We don't really care about you. We're dwarves, and we're just going to do our own thing, like we've always done. And I'm sure they gripe about each other, but isn't that what they do anyway? It's kind of their thing. So a world in which the dwarves don't think so highly of elves, I don't think that's not a stretch. So I think they're, if they're doing the kind of, maybe they're more elemental in nature. They work with the rock, they work with the stone, they're in their caldera volcanoes and things. Perhaps they are more like almost like elemental priests and things, rather than worshiping or thinking about power as in a person. Maybe they're more like land focused.
Well, yeah, because I see them being primitive and tribal, and it's not so like you said, not so much nerf. But what if we went a different route, and instead of like elves and dwarves being at odds with each other like they always are, what if most of the other races just revered the elves?
Which is the natural order is the elves are on top.
Mm-hmm.
That could be.
I mean, they're probably. And I feel like I said, like I like the idea of all the races having their own mythos of how they stopped the volcano from going off, except for the elves on the flotilla, and they just left and have no idea what happened. And I would want to do like let's say the elves are all high elves, right? or a mix of high elves and wood elves,
and they're still the dominant species together.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you have this god empress and this like Aztec society, and maybe they do sacrifices, maybe they don't. Like that's something, maybe that's what they claim, appeases the volcano, but really it's really just meant to, prolong the life of the elf that's there, right? That's why they're the god empress, because they've been fed, all these souls. It's like a living lich, but not quite. And then I feel like you would want the flotilla elves to have a different kind of government, a different system.
Right.
If we're trying to make, the same, a version of elves, but them being completely different because they evolved differently. Like maybe the flotilla, maybe they actually conduct themselves more like a sailing ship and their hierarchy set up that way because it's kind of like that. Kevin Burke, thanks for the super chat. Kobolds can agree elves are on top for now. All subject to change. All right, Ted, you've been taking notes?
I have been. I got them all. Don't worry about it.
Nice.
I got them all because I'm going to build this out.
And we like talked about tools a little bit, but there's also, I haven't played with it, but I am meaning to, and Jim Davis has sworn by it, and that is World Anvil. I don't know if people can still sign up for that for free. But it's going to be free, but I think they had it open and they closed it off for a while. I definitely have signed up for it, but you can do all kinds of cool things in there for writing up world building, timelines, and it connects all the pages.
Zerf Gaming wants to know what's our thoughts on sky cities in this world? Floating cities.
I
would say, I'm not saying I'm for or against, but if they exist, they are ancient cultures that, it's only a myth if they actually exist. Mm-hmm. They would be above the clouds, but okay. I'm not certain how I really feel about it. I think that the world itself is too primitive to have something like that.
I guess it could be just something that they talk about, sort of like you said, a myth, something that's talked about. It's kind of taken on its own sort of stories.
So,
each island has their different cloud city stories.
So going with that idea, what if all of the islands were originally flying islands, and
are they hit the ground or something?
The ones that are on the ground or in the water are the ones that have fallen for some reason or another. So the Cataclysm was actually falling out of the sky.
Pretty interesting, actually.
I don't think things survive that though.
Well, I mean, it was more like crash landing, not necessarily like falling directly out of the sky thousands and thousands of feet.
It could slowly descend like a
Yeah, like you know, 2 out of 4 magic motors break that keep you afloat. You gotta make an emergency landing.
Well, actually,
featherfall. That's what I'm looking for. Jeez. So it sinks like a featherfall. So it plunges into the ocean and it's like, okay, you know, we're here now, but you know, just a little bit of shaky and you're all good.
That could have happened millennia ago, you know, and then the islands finally pushed back together through plate tectonics or whatever, and now it's become the myth of the cloud cities.
The way I would go with that is they were cursed, right? Like if there's floating cities still, the ones that fell are considered a curse, so they would never step foot on them. And maybe they didn't fall once, like you guys said, but they fell over time until they come to last on the ground. Star Cruiser go crash. Yeah, that's going way back. Wasn't that the Ewok special, Christmas special?
Not the Ewoks Christmas special, but just the Ewok movies. Star Cruiser Krish.
But yeah, so over time they descend. They're considered their cursed land. So no one that is currently in a floating island would ever go down there. And maybe
they probably don't know about them either. So I mean, like the cloud islands, they would know about the lands below, but the lands below might not even remember. It's just the stuff that they talked about, you know.
So maybe that's where your Avariel and your Aarakocra are.
Oh, it could be.
Are there any other flying races besides two?
Let's throw them in there. Just pop them in.
Feral chieftains.
Angels. I mean, not angels. Elves with angel wings. You gotta have them.
Avariels.
The Varials.
Oh, all right. Sorry. I was busy talking to chat. Sorry.
The cloud cities like the Jetsons, just like that. So what about deities? What about religion?
Do we want to actually have gods in this world? Do we want to go in a Dark Sun direction?
I don't want to do Dark Sun. Maybe, or like the idea that they worship spirits and like everything has its spirits, kind of more of a shamanistic.
Yeah.
You could have some, similar to, the God Empress. If we had, actual titans, that existed on the world, perhaps like these are the things that are worshipped.
Okay.
Whether it be your dragon turtle, whether it be your Empyrean.
I was thinking a little more basic, like this rock, that tree,
right? Like the elements per se.
Well, you were talking about the spirit angle. I was saying, in addition to that, others might want to worship something that's fully manifested.
Shasta says a Tabaxi god named Valkyrian. So, they might worship the volcano, or what if the God Empress just insisted everyone worship her, and actually worshiping other things was illegal?
Yeah, I mean, she could say that, but.
And does she have any power, like true magic power, or is she just someone that's?
Well, that's up for debate. Is it all a sham?
She has not been tested in living
right,
memory.
Right. But is it legit? Is she more of a a traveling salesman than actually?
At the very least, I would like to see that she's able to grant warlock packs.
All right, so that puts her like well above mortal powers.
Okay.
So then, yeah, she's the real deal.
And she's a physical something that exists that people have seen and actually makes contact and is considered basically worshipped in a deity, or is this also just kind of,
Well, does she
avatar?
does she exist on the spiritual and creates a physical manifestation whenever she so desires? So like it appears magical when she can literally just appear at a moment's notice wherever, or is it she is literally limited to one physical vessel?
Right.
What if she's like one of those old school druid liches that the elves could be? I forget what they're called.
Baylor?
No, let's start with
Balorn,
yeah,
something like that. I thought about that, and then Ricky mentioned it in the chat. So,
Elf Beta said something about that as well in the chat.
Oh, okay, I missed it.
Yeah, I like the idea of her being there at the beginning when the elves split, and she probably took credit for the volcano not going off. Maybe she did make it not go off.
I'm
definitely taking credit for it.
I'm against it being a lich. Just that's my vote.
Yeah, I'm not really into the undead stuff either. We could put a fire volcano lich in the volcano or something.
What was that? You want to put a volcano lich?
I'd much rather see an elemental being there rather than an undead.
Yeah.
So I would go with like an undefined immortal being. That's what she actually is. She's not. Maybe she's not actually a god, but
she's transcendent.
Yeah, but she's transcendent, being a mortal elf at the same time.
We can hash that out. Whatever transcendent means later.
It's somewhere between mortal and deity. Powerful enough, to give out the warlock packs, but not so powerful that she. I don't know.
Okay.
So the question is like, what do you think the interaction is going to be with the other races in the city? Like, I like the idea that everyone kind of comes from somewhere else. Like, you have the dwarves living in the volcano doing their thing. Maybe they come and trade obsidian goods and jewelry and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, they're kind of barbaric. Some of them would probably have stayed. I kind of like the idea of the halflings like heading through the treetops like monkeys.
Or boreal halflings.
Boreal halflings.
Yeah, they don't touch the ground.
They just live in the trees.
Matter of fact, maybe
they trees on the continents or on the islands or both. Can you never get rid of halflings?
So like, are we talking like full on swinging through the trees? Or are you talking about like vine bridges all over the place, running around like Tarzan?
Okay.
Both.
Oh God.
Matter of fact, the halflings, the boreal halflings that live in the trees,
all right,
they actually disdain the halflings that live in the city because they touch the ground all the time.
Is the ground dirty?
Well, Ted, I mean, dirt's there. What else could it be? Of course it's dirty. It's unclean.
Accolade 14, the halflings jump and swing through the trees, flinging poo at the elves.
Zanov 1 says, give halflings prehensile tails like monkeys.
No. They're normal halflings. They're just extremely agile.
Kianata wants crazy jungle halflings that train huge gorillas.
When they have to get close to the ground, they step upon the gorillas. That's how it works.
Is that how it works?
Okay, so the question, I don't know how far it is into the chat. I mean, in the thing. But the question I've been waiting to ask is, are there psionics?
I don't know.
I think they're too primitive.
Yeah, I say no. Let's vote.
I think magic is high.
We can all vote. We'll throw it.
I'm going to vote I'm going to spam yes.
You get one vote.
Right. I'm going to change. I'm going to say yes, but they're up in the sky island.
Okay, that's right. We could pop those in because that's a whole separate campaign. You've got your sky campaign and you could have your continent campaigns.
There we go. All right.
Accolade 14 says, hell yes, there are psionics.
Yeah, that's right.
islands will add psionic powers to the cloud people. Got it. All right.
So what about other races like half orcs and gnomes? And we didn't really talk about Dragonborn. They just were mentioned in passing.
Well, I like the idea of like, really going with the idea of the iguana or the Komodo dragon and turning them into a like pseudo aquatic race. Somebody mentioned way back, probably like a half hour ago, about making the half orcs, like, because if we're not gonna have orcs here, like to like reskin them to be like gorilla men, like literally just.
That might actually be cool because
Borks.
What?
Borks.
Borks.
Let's have Borks instead.
So the Bork is something we made up in a video way back when, is basically a humanoid boar.
Pig, boar, whatever. There's stats for it somewhere on the website.
Oh, we have a straw poll going on in the chat for psionics, yes or no?
Yep, they're in the Cloud Islands.
In the Cloud Islands.
Yeah, we did it. We made it happen.
Yep.
So Elf Bait is saying that it was his idea to make the half orcs gorilla men.
Well, I'm into the Borks.
The Borks.
More than the
or
gorilla
like
men.
a Neanderthal type person.
I'm not arguing with the Borks.
Okay, Borks it is. I'm adding them.
Yay!
We can fight about it later. When we build our campaign book. And
First session, Bork genocide is what happens.
Build the world destroyed in the next cataclysm.
I guess this DM didn't like Borks.
Well, see what the thing is there are no pigs, and somebody found out how to make bacon, and that was it.
The halflings are making bacon from
cannibal halflings. That it was always going to happen.
Oreo, we can also add them as there's some cannibal sides to them too.
Fantastic.
Or maybe go even a little bit more different and be like one of the sects of dwarves are actually the cannibals.
All right, I'll add it.
All right.
That was another thing that was mentioned a while ago. Was cannibal dwarves.
But we can flesh that out later.
Bork, so the Swedish chef is here. Also, I believe it was Kevin that asked about the kobolds. I like kobolds. What do we want to do with them?
We got to do something different. I don't know what that is yet.
What if we make aquatic kobolds?
Well, they would be the marine iguanas then, huh?
What do you think? What would we do different with kobolds that hasn't been done before?
So I mean, are we crossing kobold with like a fish, and they're gonna have some form of tail or web fins?
They're called merbolds now. Merbolds.
More merbolds.
Yeah, I like the idea of you crossing them. They've got the webbed hands, and they've got some kind of small tail, and like they could be like a nuisance raider. Always stealing supplies, so they're still doing the stuff that kobolds do, but just rather than being underground, they're underwater.
Yeah, which is worse because they're all islands. They just attack like a damn.
Elfbait says crawbolds.
Sneak up.
I'm into the kobolds kind of being a little elevated over what they are now, and maybe more like gnomish in nature than kind of like make them like more of the standard race for this region rather than the kind of joke they are normally.
Well, if done properly, it's not a joke.
Well, yeah, they're scary, terrible. Yeah, I agree. But
Sean says, how about making them Vikings?
You say that on a joke, but you missed my game I just played. That was hilarious. Oh man.
We got Ricky says, "How about seagull kobolds?" Adam Ogre says they should be pets or house servants.
Like Dobby.
Kobold Vikings.
Oh, what about? Oh, I kind of like that idea. What if like it's unlucky to consider your house is considered unlucky if you don't have a kobold?
I that would totally turn them on their heels. Like to have them be normal in town. It's either unlucky or you're just you're common or what have you.
I like unlucky because I would like the idea of like building up a lot of superstition around this campaign.
Yeah.
All right. So no more aquatic kobolds. Now it's a kobold in every house. Is that?
I would put a question mark on that one. I don't want to completely get rid of the half merfolk, half kobold yet.
So we've got aquatic something. All right. And then are we going to do the kobolds as the beloved slaves?
They're already good at making traps and stuff like that. So are we going to make them kind of like useful in the sense that they're industrious in that kind of crafting and creating little things?
They fix shoes and they're like house gnomes.
Okay.
Well, what do you guys think about it too? Like me and Ted kind of weighed in, but what do you two think?
Well, I like the idea of them being like gnomish tinkering kind of things. I said that in the beginning, so I'm cool with that. And of course, it's lucky because your whole household would benefit from having a person that can do that kind of stuff.
And like maybe it stems from they were all enslaved in the beginning, and slowly but surely, like they kind of morphed into this kobold for every house, kobold kind of thing. But a bunch of the other kobolds escaped into the sea and never left. And maybe they have animosity towards the kobolds that are, kind of live in the houses.
And then soon, the army of hundreds of apparati that they create will come to the doom of the island.
Maybe, yeah.
Where they will free their people, who are kind of living very nicely and being taken care of.
No, like, wait, no.
No, you can just go back into those things and get out of here.
No, you've got this all wrong. This is actually pretty sweet.
Sean Orwin says, kobolds is as despicable me minions.
Absolutely. Well, it could be like a status could be like how many kobolds does your house have? Especially if we make them like a little bit smaller, so you can pack more in.
and rather than ownership, it's more like the kobolds agree to stay there because they treat it well and do stuff for you.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that brownie mythos where you treat them poorly, they're just going to play pranks on you and go away.
No, I wouldn't want to go full on. No,
they're not fae.
No. I wouldn't want to go full on Harry Potter house elves that like. They're so like, devoted and what have you. Yeah, I don't want to go. I want to go there. Like, all right, you treat them nicely, and they'll be nice to you. You go in the other direction, and
they'll just leave.
Well, either they'll leave or they'll go like full prehistoric kobold on your ass while you're asleep.
That's why it's unlucky. That's why it's unlucky to
That's why it's like you have these things, but you've got to know what you're getting yourself into if you have them in your house.
Well, and a house that's fallen on hard times and can't treat their kobolds nicely, the kobolds will leave. So it would be seen as unlucky because they're like the first things to go. They're like, all right, we're out of here. This household's going down. We're out of here.
This is the status. So we are just past the hour mark. So this is a good start. Maybe we can pick this up again next month.
Yep.
If you'd like, Ellie. If you guys in the chat are enjoying it. I had like 80 people hanging out with us babbling about these islands.
Awesome.
I'm looking at all the notes now.
Next, we'll have to come up with a name, for either the region or the or the idea of the campaign setting having a name.
Okay, so the name will have to come next time.
I think so. We definitely have a good place to start with. Thanks for hanging out with us, Ellie, and thanks for being a patron at the top here. Thanks everyone who's been hanging out with us in the chat. Greatly appreciate it. And we're going to try and get these back on track and doing them every month. So with that, guys, until next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.